Amanda. Amanda. Let's be seated, please. Dumela. Molweni. Goeiemiddag. Program Director, Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Minister Zizi Kotwa, and MEC for Arts, Culture, Sports and Recreation, Ms. Desiree Finnis, Minister of Justice, Minister Lamula, Minister of the Civil Service, Minister Kivit, Deputy Ministers, the Premier of the Northern Cape, Dr. Zamani Sol, the Chairperson of the South African Human Rights Commission, Professor Majola, Reverend Chris Nissen, the Mayor of Pixley, Kaisa Kaseme District, and the Mayor of Mtanjeni, as well as community leaders who are here with us. Namhlanje kusuku olubaluleke kakhulu apha eMzantsi Afrika. Dit is 'n baie belangrike dag waarop ons die groot vordering vier wat ons as 'n nasie gemaak het en die bou van 'n demokratiese wat gegrond is op gelyke menseregte vir alle mense. It is quite an important day for all of us because it is a day on which we celebrate the great progress that we have made as a people and as a nation in building a democracy that is founded on equal human rights for all. But it is in building the democracy that we have that we should be proud of. Even though others would want to diminish this democracy, even though others would want to abuse the rights of others, intimidate them, compel them to participate in protests, compel them to participate in days where they should not go to work, I am happy that the majority of South Africans did not heed the call, but they exercised their rights as South Africans. It is a day on which we remember and pay tribute to the many people who fought for these rights and for the great sacrifices that they made. Many of our forebears fought for the rights that we have enshrined in our Constitution. This is also a day on which we look to the future. Asipheleli apha kuphela, sijonga phambili ukuthi kusasa lethu luzoba lunjani na. and we reaffirm our pledge not only to safeguard and uphold these rights at all times, but to strive to ensure that all people may exercise these rights to their fullest. As you have said, Reverend Nissen, we should exercise these rights and leave no one behind. Kungabi noyedwa ozosala emva. Sisonke siqhubeke siye phambili. Singashiyi umuntu emva. This is a significant year for the celebration of Human Rights Day. This year is the 100th anniversary of the adoption of the first Bill of Rights in South Africa's history. In 1923, the African National Congress adopted a Bill of Rights that demonstrated the aspirations of black South Africans for equal rights in the land of their birth. This was an act of remarkable vision at a time when the majority of South Africans were by law denied the rights that we now have today. The adoption of the Bill of Rights, which had no legal standing at the time, took place just a decade after the Native Land Act had resulted in the mass dispossession of Africans of their land. It took 13 years after the Union of South Africa confirmed that black South Africans would have no say in the running of their country. Today, as we mark Human Rights Day, we pay tribute to those men and women who had the vision and the foresight to proclaim that all people in this country have inalienable human rights. Batsho bathi sisonke sinawo amalungelo. Batsho bathi wonke umuntu walapha eSouth Africa unamalungelo. All of us have basic human rights. Siyababulela abo einkokheli zethu ezayenza sure ukuthi ngo-1923 kube ne Bill of Human Rights, Bill of Rights. They had vision, they were able to look forward and to say that this country requires a Bill of Rights. The theme of Human Rights Day this year is consolidating and sustaining human rights culture into the future. And I would say, leaving no one behind. As we look to the future, let us reflect on the past. As we learn the lessons of the past, let us work together to confront its devastating legacy. One of the defining features of the Bill of Rights contained in our Constitution is the inclusion of social and economic rights, precisely the issues that Reverend Chris Nissen was referring to. In addition to the right to life, equality, and human dignity, our Constitution also says that everyone has the right to housing, to health care, to food, to water, to social security, and to education. That is inscribed in our Constitution. And by the way, so that you can remember, when we drafted the Constitution, we went throughout the entire country and consulted you, our people, In the end, it was the people of South Africa who said, we want a constitution, the supreme law of the land must talk about these very needs that we have. It must talk about education. It must talk about housing. It must talk about health care. It was you who required that your constitution must include socio-economic rights. And today, we have such a constitution. Why do we have it? We have such a constitution so that the government of the day must always remember that in whatever it does, it must put the needs of the people of South Africa topmost in their minds. The Constitution says the state must take reasonable measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization of each of these rights. So it is therefore about the state, the government, always taking steps to make sure that these rights are realized. Premier Zamani Saul, sitting next to me here, last year when I was here, he said to me, President, we need almost 80,000 houses here in the Northern Cape. We need to build many schools here in the Northern Cape. And he said, if we go on the basis of what the national government treasury allocates to us, it will easily take us 100 years before we have all these things that the people of Northern Cape need. And then he and I started talking about ways in which we could find funding methods to ensure that, yes, there are more clinics built, there are more houses built, and so forth. So we've been in discussion with Treasury to say, how best can this be done? And he's just reported to me that those discussions are about to reach good conclusion so that we can fund the building of houses, we can fund the building of clinics. And yes, he even told me that Sandral, the one that repairs and installs our roads, because the roads here in the Northern Cape are being damaged by the mining trucks on an ongoing basis. Sandral has agreed that it is going to invest the building of our roads, and it's going to invest billions of rands, starting now going forward, to repair the roads of our province here. So progress then is being made from the idea of ensuring that what is set out in our Bill of Rights, houses, health, clinics, and even repairing our roads, will now be done through the various ways of funding that we spoke about last year. This, as the Constitution says, must be realized on an ongoing basis. The Bill of Rights also guarantees the right to property and says the state must work to ensure that citizens have equitable access to land. This property clause makes provision for land reform, for land restitution, and security of tenure to redress the results of past racial discrimination. This clause would no doubt be welcome by people who drafted the 1923 Bill of Rights, who declared that all Africans have, as the sons of this soil, the God-given right to unrestricted ownership of the land in this, the land of their birth. Since the advent of democracy, since 1994, successive administrations have done much to ensure that there is progressive realization of these rights for all South Africans. The expanding provision of basic services to households has been one of the most important interventions to improve the lives of all South Africans. According to Stats SA, access to water and sanitation, electricity, housing and other services like waste removal has increased steadily over the last 3 decades. We must remember that we used to live in a country where only white people had the best of everything, where they had the best houses, where they had the best schools, where they had the best clinics, the best hospitals. Now the democratic government has had to include everyone. It has had to ensure that all our people enjoy the rights that are set out in our Constitution. And today, the administration, the 6th administration and previous administrations keep on making efforts to make sure that, yes, our people get basic services, and we will admit that because the task is huge, much bigger than what the apartheid government had, and it costs much more money than what the apartheid government had to do to care for a minority of white people. Our government, the various administrations since Utatu Nelson Mandela, have been making efforts to ensure that our people do get the rights. Around 2 million households, indigent households, today receive free basic water, free basic electricity, and free solid waste removal. Treasury spends up to 70 billion rand caring for those households that do not have the means to have or enjoy these rights. Yet, despite this progress, there are, we must admit, still many people who do not have access to all these services. Many people live in informal settlements without adequate housing, without water, without sanitation. Last year, towards the end of the year, Premier Zamani Saul and myself were talking about precisely this. And he was saying here in the Northern Cape, they see many informal settlements just being established all over. And it is because our people are poor, they are unemployed, they don't have houses, and they have many needs. And these are the needs that our government is determined to address, as Reverend Chris Nissen was saying. Reverend Chris Nissen was saying, you as government, you have the responsibility to make sure that our people do enjoy the basic human rights that are set out in the Constitution. And he is right. The government will never run away from its responsibility. And we will make sure that, yes, we realize the aspirations of our people. And that is why Premier Zamani Saul continues to talk to Treasury, continues to say, my people in the Northern Cape have many needs. And that is why many other premiers in our country continue to find ways of addressing the needs of our people. That is why the ministers we have continue to do that as well. And that is why my task as president is to make sure that we address the needs of our people within the means that we have. So this is a task we are not going to run away from. This is a task that, yes, God has given us. This is a task that you, our people, have given us, and we will address the needs that you have as a people. We know very well that in some of our municipalities, the provision of these services that I'm talking about, the provision of the services is unreliable. There are times when water is not provided or is of a poor quality, or where refuse and waste is not collected. The failure to provide adequate services consistently is a human rights issue. That is why we are working to improve the functioning of local government, which carries the greatest responsibility for the provision of these services. Through changes to legislation and support programs, we are working to improve the capacity of public representatives and officials and direct more resources towards maintaining and upgrading local infrastructure. That is why we are working very hard to make sure that our municipalities work. We know that some municipalities don't work as well as they should. We also know that some municipalities, some of those that should be doing the work are stealing the money that should be going to serve you. We know, ons weet, dat 'n paar van die mense wat in die munisipaliteit werk, is baie lui, hulle werk nie hard nie, ons weet dit. Siyakwazi konke lokho. That is why sithi singuhulumeni, omasipala aba bethu sizawuyenza zonke indlela ukuthi sibalungise. Ndihlala ndithi abo abayeba imali bazawubotshwa. Those who steal money, we will make sure that they get arrested. And abo abangazimiselanga, those who are not prepared to work and serve the people, they must go. Mabamke. Baphume ngomnyango okanye baphume ngefestere. Want ons wil hê dat al onze mense, all our people must be well served. Because you know, today is Human Rights Day. Just these services, and I do want everyone who works to serve our people must know that when we don't do our work, we are violating the human rights of our people. If you don't serve our people well, whether it's in a clinic, whether it's in a hospital, whether it's in a municipality, if you don't serve our people well, you are violating their human rights. And if you don't serve them with a measure of joy, if you don't serve them with a measure of dignity and respect, you are violating their human rights. Now, yesterday I was with a friend of mine. This friend of mine tells me I'd gone to see him because he was in hospital. So he came out of hospital and he said he had one of the most horrible experiences in hospital. And I said, what was that? He said he was having great difficulty himself and needed help. And there was a nurse who said, I'm not going to spend my time helping you. Now, he's the same age as myself. And he says he was so weak, he needed so much help, that he had to scream and shout for another nurse to come and help him. And later he told his doctor that when he needed help, this nurse would not serve him. And they've now started disciplinary proceedings against this nurse who refused to serve. Now, I basically said to him, tomorrow I am going to DR. It's a Human Rights Day, and I think that nurse was violating your human rights by not serving you, because her job is to serve you, to make sure that you return to a state of health. So that is why I am saying all of us who are in the state sector, all of us who work for government, who are leaders in government, our job is to serve the people of South Africa. That is our job. By signing up to say we will work in government, we are signing up to advance the rights of South Africans. And so therefore, all civil servants, all of us who are in the state sector, I call upon you, and I'm glad that Minister Kivit is here, I call upon you all to make sure that we serve the people of South Africa to the best of our ability and not violate their human rights. We must serve them with dignity, with respect, and with love. The young lady there was singing about love, love, love. And yes, we must show our people the love that we have in our hearts to serve them. Government recently introduced what we call the green drop and the blue drop reports, which has to deal with provision of water. And this also is about improving our ability to give good services to our people. Now, in terms of these reports, we are now going to be making better interventions in regard to the services, particularly underwater, that we have to make to our people. There are also a number of water infrastructure projects underway to improve the security of supply of water to key areas across the country, including here in the Northern Cape. Another significant intervention against poverty is the provision of social grants, which are the main source of income for about a quarter of our households here in South Africa. Just over 2.5 million people are receiving social grants. We're receiving social grants in 1999. Reverend Nissan, you will be pleased to know that whilst in 1999 there were only 2.5 million people, today over 18 million people are now receiving these grants, which means that we are respecting the rights of South Africans. Now, to relieve the pressure on poor households during COVID-19, government also introduced a new special grant, which is the 350 special grant. And while this grant is a small grant, but it has been extended to the end of March 2024. Now, work is underway to provide a basic income support for the most vulnerable within the country's fiscal constraint. Now, already almost 30 million South Africans are in receipt of one grant or another, and I can promise you, we are the only country on the African continent that has made sure that we advance the rights of South Africans. No other country that I know of on the African continent does what we do here in South Africa for our people. The Bill of Rights says that everyone has the right to a basic education and to a further education, which the state must make progressively available and accessible. Over the last 3 decades, important progress has been made to access education. Remember, in our Constitution, the right to education is enshrined. And we also said we must, on a progressive basis, on a year-to-year basis, as we have more money, as we have more capability, we must be extending this right. Now, to ensure every child gets a solid foundation for social and educational development, government has prioritized early childhood development. The Department of Basic Education, which is now responsible for ECD, is streamlining the requirement for ECD centers to access support and enable thousands more to receive subsidies from government. We have 7 million children who should be in early childhood development centers. Thus far, we only have 1.5 million in these centers. Now, every year we are going to make sure that we give more and more support to the other children who should be in early childhood development centers. So we are going to be raising this every year. South Africa has a significantly high level of enrollment in basic education. In 2019, 96% of 6-year-old children attended an education institution. However, the dropout rate from school is still quite high. So we need to make sure that once children start school, they must finish their 12 years of schooling. So we want to address this problem. And last year, we saw with the matric results that yes, there is improvement, but I want to see more improvement here in the Northern Cape with your matric results. And the Premier is already starting a program that is going to lead us in that direction. I think we should applaud him and encourage him and his MECs to make sure that indeed the education here in the Northern Cape does improve indeed. Now, as we move forward, this is a problem that we've got to pay attention to and make sure that everybody in the school leadership, educators and parents need to work together to address this problem. An important intervention to improve school attendance and alleviate poverty was the introduction of a no-fee school in poor communities. We have seen the results of our investment in education in the steady improvement of the overall matric pass rate. And as I said, I'd like to see much better outcomes in our pass rates here in the Northern Cape, as we are seeing in other provinces as well. This year, or last year, we saw a pass rate that was 80%. We need to see much more here in this province as well, as I said. Learners from no-fee schools are steadily performing better in matric, achieving a greater number of bachelor passes. As part of a commitment to expand access to higher education for students from poor and working class backgrounds, the number of students that is funded by NSFAS increased from 580 in 2018 to almost 800,000 in 2022. So this is a big improvement. Now, despite this, as we saw in the last few weeks, many students are still experiencing difficulties in funding their studies, in accommodation, in their living expenses. This year, government plans to finalize comprehensive student funding model for higher education. Among other things, this aims to reach those who don't meet the NSFAS criteria but are still unable to afford tertiary education. The Bill of Rights says that everyone has the right to have access to healthcare services, including reproductive health care. Since the advent of democracy, starting with the provision of free health care to children under 5 years of age and pregnant women, government has made substantial progress in the provision of quality health care, especially to the poor. However, we must say that there is still significant inequality in access to health care. The National Health Insurance Bill, which is currently before Parliament, is meant to correct this state of affairs. The introduction of the NHI will enable every South African to receive quality health care, regardless of their ability to pay. Now, there are many who say that the NHI is going to destroy our health care. Right now, many of our people are living under a health system that is destroyed, where they do not have access to quality health care right now. The National Health Care Insurance is meant to correct that, because as our Bill of Rights says, and as Reverend Nissen says, leave no one behind. We must be able to treat our people equally so that we can all enjoy the same level of health care. We are preparing for the implementation of the NHI through the National Quality Improvement Plan and putting in place the necessary staff as well as funding. We are improving the quality of care in our clinics through the Ideal Clinic program, using the experience of COVID-19, particularly the vaccination record system. We will introduce an electronic solution to improve the management of health records. If we are to advance and secure these social and economic rights into the future, then we need to tackle poverty and inequality. We need to create employment and economic opportunity. To achieve this, to give us the means to enable progressive realization of all these rights, we need to grow our economy and achieve far greater levels of investment. The work that is being undertaken to increase investment in both economic and social infrastructure is a vital part of the effort to improve the provision of services to all. This includes investments in roads. As you heard, Sandral is going to invest in our roads here in the Northern Cape. As you have always heard me, this includes the building of the rural bridges. And this year we are going to build almost 100 rural bridges. This includes building new human settlements, houses. This includes water schemes. And this also includes expanding our electricity network. By the same measure, the work that we are doing to improve the efficacy and competitiveness of our telecommunications industry, electricity system, and ports and railways will contribute to increasing investment and employment. I've often said that the work that we are doing, particularly in what we call network industries, in creating a climate for good investments, we can see it here clearly in the Northern Cape. The Northern Cape has already attracted investments of up to 100 billion rand in renewable energy systems. You have to travel in the Northern Cape. You will see these towers of wind. You will see these solar panels. You will see a great deal of investment that is happening here. We are now going to see the emergence of another sector, hydrogen power, that is also going to be generated here in the Northern Cape. So we do this because we want to improve investment and increase the level of employment here in the Northern Cape. Now, the province's mining industry also continues to grow. While there are new opportunities opening up, as I've said, in energy, we welcome the province's effort to ensure that these projects create further work opportunities by investing in industrial parks and special economic zones. Government has introduced a program like the Presidential Employment Stimulus to create public and social employment opportunities for young people in particular. This is happening alongside projects with the private sector to provide work experience for young people and also to fund small and medium enterprises. The Bill of Rights guarantees the rights of all people to life, to human dignity, to freedom, to security, and to the right of movement as well. The high levels of violent crime, including crime against women and children, are a direct and brutal violation of these fundamental rights. Society has come together in different ways to respond to violent crime. Communities have been working with the police through the community policing forums. Civil society organizations are working with government to implement the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicides. Business is working with law enforcement agencies and state-owned enterprises to tackle the damage to economic infrastructure. As we increase the presence and the visibility of police, as we strengthen the National Prosecuting Authority and improve the operation of our courts, we need to mobilize everyone in society as part of a national effort to end violent crime. These are amongst the most important issues that we need to attend to as a nation if we are to sustain our human rights and also have a human rights culture going into the future. We cannot claim to be a country that respects human rights if we do not do everything in our power and within our resources to ensure that all South Africans have access to land, to housing, to food, to water, to healthcare, and to education. As a nation, we cannot claim to respect human rights if we do not do everything we can to ensure that all people have access to work, economic opportunity and to live lives that are comfortable, that are safe and secure. There can be no doubt that we have achieved much in securing the rights of all South Africans, but we know from daily experience that we still need to do much more. On this Human Rights Day, I would like us to affirm our determination to make sure that, yes, we do realize these rights for all South Africans, so that no one is left behind. In doing so, we will give effect to the promise of our democratic constitution, and we will be paying the greatest tribute to the visionary leaders like Nelson Mandela, like Umama Albertina Sisulu, Helen Joseph, Osol Plaatje, who were the first to advocate for the respect of a Bill of Rights in our country. So, this being such an important day in the annual calendar of our country, I am really pleased that we are celebrating this day here in the center of the country, because you, DR, you are the center of South Africa. It is in this center, and many people don't know this, and I think of many people, Minister Zizi Kodwa knows it, because as I arrived, he was saying to me, President, you are at the center of the country. I said, Zizi Kodwa, I've always known it, that DR is the center of the country. So it is a joy and a real pleasure that today, Human Rights Day, is here in DR, and I wish every South African a happy Human Rights Day, and I wish you all here a happy Human Rights Day here in DR, and thank you very much for being here.